So welcome to our orientation session for 2022, done by the Community Building Working Group of the Social Development Plan Stakeholders Table. My name is Walied Khogali Ali. Welcome to the Community Building Orientation session. So our facilitators for today are Joel and myself. So we're co-chairs of the Community Building Working Group. Joel, do you want to say hi quickly?
Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm agency co-chair for the working group, and I work with Yonge Street Mission.
Thank you, Joel. So a little bit about myself. I'm a resident of Regent Park, community builder. I care a lot about affordable transit, environmental stewardship, equity, and human rights. And I'm known for working with residents to create safe, inclusive, sustainable communities free from hate and discrimination. And I'm also co-founder of the Coalition Against White Supremacy and Islamophobia. I'm gonna now move forward with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge that Toronto is built upon the traditional lands of the Mississauga, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Huron, and many other Indigenous peoples, and that these peoples have been the stewards of the land in Toronto and across Turtle Island for thousands of years. It's important to acknowledge the history of the lands that we are on, to stop and think about how the lands that we use today have supported and nourished other nations, other peoples before we came to use them. We must acknowledge that we now benefit from the land to learn how we may continue to respect the histories and steward the land. I would like to acknowledge that Canada is founded on white supremacy as a trade and commerce economy that continues to affect the lives and well-being of Indigenous peoples, putting economic greed in front of Indigenous rights. The understanding and acknowledgement of the peoples that came before is particularly relevant here in Regent Park, as it has been home to Indigenous people from time immemorial, but has also been home to waves of tight-knit communities for more than 100 years. Regent Park's history includes multiple efforts to tear down and rebuild, with each iteration of the neighborhood washing away the connections to the people, lives, and communities that were here before. As a richly diverse community, displacement is something that many Regent Parkers feel deeply as part of the history of the land and part of their own histories as newcomers, descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and other forms of imperialism, and as community members that have called Regent Park home before and during the most period of revitalization. This meeting has been organized by the Community Building Working Group of the Regent Park Social Development Plan Stakeholders Table, a community-led neighborhood governance table that respects Indigenous cultural worldview that is based in kinship, taking care of our community and people and the land, and sharing what we have with those around us. The process of revitalization here in Regent Park offers us an opportunity through the Social Development Plan to honor the histories of the Mississauga, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, the Huron, as well as the peoples that have called Regent Park home over the last century, and to preserve the spirit of community, neighborliness, and advocacy that has been so vibrant within our community. We can acknowledge the history of the land and are committed to stewarding it and preserving it. Our agenda for today is, we just went through a Zoom overview and land acknowledgement. We're gonna go through the meeting objectives. We're gonna go through a community agreement. We're gonna have an engaging conversation through our orientation of the Community Building Working Group. We're going to quickly talk about the city approved projects, and then we're going to take questions and answers and end off our amazing virtual meeting with actions and next steps. So just want to remind everyone that our community agreement is that this is a safe space. This space is dedicated to creating an equitable, diverse, and inclusive environment for people of all races, genders, classes, abilities, ages, cultures, religions, and sexualities. This is a safe space to speak. Please note that this event will also be recorded. The purpose of our meeting is to engage Regent Park residents and community stakeholders through important opportunities to get involved with community building opportunities and projects in Regent Park. We want to hear from you, and we want to ensure everyone has an opportunity to get an orientation and be involved in decisions that will affect the community and the lives of all Regent Park residents. So we're going to get started off with our orientation. So I'd like to invite Joel to lead us through this section. Joel, you have the floor.
Thanks, Wally. And just know, folks, that we do want to present a bunch of stuff to you. Hopefully it's not too much stuff, and there will be lots of time to ask questions later on in the meeting. So I'm going to go through a pretty quick overview of what we're about, what this community building working group is about, and what it's part of. I'll if you can just look at the slides as we go through them. I'm not going to read them word for word. I will summarize them so people who are not able to see them know what they're about. So this social development plan is in place because of the revitalization. And that revitalization was, it came out of advocacy and community work and community solidarity. And sort of like a first wave, maybe not even a first wave, but an earlier wave of this work that was happening about 20, 25, 30 years ago. We have Deanie Peters with us, so good to have you. And Deanie was part of that work and carries that history. And so that culminated in the city deciding to do a revitalization process, and that began finally in 2007, or at least this social development plan was approved in 2007. So as that earlier wave went through, there was a lot of neighborhood and resident participation, a lot of thinking and care and thought went in that came from residents, and that issued forth into this social development plan, which was approved in 2007. Actually, guys, I'm realizing Waleed, can you just sort of follow as I do the slides, go through the slides, please? So I'm a few slides down. I'm watching on my own screen here. So I'll go to the slide on the social development plan, which is, this is a nice little graphic. And so the revitalization, like everybody living in the park knows about all the buildings being torn down and built up again and so on, like that's very evident. So that's the physical side of it. And then what we're about is the social side of it, the people side of it, trying to really be intentional and conscious about bringing people together so that this revitalization actually works. It's not just something that's about bricks and mortar. It's actually about, a community that people feel they belong in. That sort of is summed up by these goals of the SDP. The goals of the SDP, like maybe most people I think know that, or probably everybody here knows that this is the idea of this revitalization is to keep the same number of RGI and TCH housing units in the community, with a little bit of, it's not exactly true, but it's the basic idea. And that at the same time, then bring in a large number of market residents. And so the idea of the social development plan then is to really be a champion of social cohesion as that process unfolds. So bringing people together from the different ways of tenancy and residency in the neighborhood, and bringing people together and making sure that everybody is accepted and respected. Another nice little tagline for it is that nobody is left behind. So that's the vision. That's what we want to be doing. And we know that this is something that is going to unfold over a span of the whole revitalization and afterwards. So it's a project of years, and we're trying to set that foundation really strongly as we begin that. We're sort of in the third year now of a refreshed social development plan. The first one through, I mentioned the 2007, there was no funding for it. But then there was a bunch of advocacy about 3 years ago from various people in the community, lots of residents, supported by agencies, and in fact supported by parts of the city as well, like staff from the city. And we were able to get approval for funding from the city council. So there is funding for the next 5 years, and hopefully another 5 years after that. So that led to this refreshed social development plan, and that has now there's a structure for it. So if we're on the structure slide now, the social development plan is sort of held together overall by a stakeholders table. And within sort of connecting to that stakeholders table, there's residents and community groups. There are working groups. So this orientation is for one of those working groups. It's the community building working group. And there are 4 other working groups that I'll get to in a moment. There's also committees. I won't even go into those right now, but just to let you know, there's several different committees that kind of watch over different parts of the work. Those tend to be more kind of technical, like evaluation and benchmarks, or a planning committee that sort of keeps things going from week to week. All of these, they're all open to residents. Anybody who wants to join the work is welcome to do it. There's lots and lots of different ways to join. And one piece of this work too is there's always an emphasis on capacity building, always trying to find ways to bring people together and help people develop skills so that they can engage in this work or other kinds of community work. They can feel more confident in doing that and more supported. So the working groups, now down to the working group slide, there's 4 working groups. These were identified, these areas were identified out of a consultation with residents. These are the sort of the areas of work that residents identified as most important for the community. So we are the community building working group. Then there's 3 others: communication. There's members from each of these working groups here tonight. Communication, safety, employment, and economic development. So lots of different work in all these different working groups. But you know, we're going to focus tonight on community building working group. And so I mentioned the $500,000 that was approved. And so some of that money has already started to flow. There's projects happening. Some of them are under community building working groups. Some of them are under other groups. But we'll give you just a little snapshot tonight of those that have been already approved and started work under the first year. And also the second year projects have also just been approved. They're just starting or will start shortly. And there's people from all or most of those groups here tonight, and they can answer questions when we're done this part of the process. And so all these projects are led by community people, often with support from organizations that are not based necessarily in the community, but always connected, always working together. And so there's been a lot that's gone into developing these projects and approving them. And in fact, the very process of choosing the projects was done through a community process called the deep dive. So we'll go on now to there's other funds that are connected to the SDP. The one that I'm going to mention, that the most important one I would think at the moment, is the Regent Park Youth Grant. And that is just coming, it's just being organized. It's money that's been donated by a private resident for this purpose, actually. And it will get going in the next few months. But we don't have a specific date now. Things have really been, this kind of work has been really affected by COVID in many different ways. And the current Omicron sort of wave of the virus has again set the work back a little bit. So it's hard to always know exactly what the timeline is going to be, but the energy behind it is very strong, and it will be happening. So just on the community building working group, these are the goals of the group. It's basically about bringing people together. And sometimes that's about supporting people who are bringing people together in their own way. And sometimes it's about us as a group bringing people together, organizing events. One of our big things, which you can hear about later if you're interested, is bringing together the Sunday in the Park Festival again, which had sort of needed to get some way of ensuring that it continued. And there's been lots of issues because of COVID, but that's one example of an event, and there's others as well. So our group, we meet monthly, first Tuesday of every month, 6 to 8 p.m. Lots of different grassroots groups are part of it, and it's a great space. One of the things that members decided they wanted to do is just have a space to introduce ourselves to each other, our work to each other. And so we do that. Every one of these working groups has 3 co-chairs. One of them is a TCH resident. Another is a market resident. and another is from an agency or organization. And we as co-chairs meet twice monthly to debrief each other, like this is what happened in the last meeting, and to prepare the following meeting. And in this meeting, we often have other members of the group who just join us because they want to, and everybody's welcome to join us. So the purpose of the meeting is very clear about keeping the work of the group moving forward, and everybody's welcome to join us as we do that work. We have one subcommittee that's we want to establish a Regent Park advisory group for the parks, forestry, and recreation. That's especially focused on the pool and on the community center, and the athletic grounds are connected to the community center. That subcommittee it's been facing some headwinds in the last little while, but it is something that there's a lot of people that are interested in making sure that that happens. We do have a terms of reference. I think I've gone over most of it, but it's linked here, and I can, if anybody wants to see that or have access to it, we can get you that. And part of the idea is that it has rotating leadership. We don't have people that will be staying in leadership like for years and years and years. The idea is to rotate it so that that there's always sort of new participation in the group, and people's skills are built in there's lots of ways to build your skills in this group. You don't have to be a co-chair, but that's part of the idea. And Walied, we've been very happy to have him join us. He followed Murshida, who is here as well. Murshida was our first TCH resident co-chair. That's an example of that rotation happening. And now we're on to city approved projects, and I'll let Walied, that's back to you.
Thank you so much, Joel. So I'm going to briefly talk about the 500K that Joel mentioned earlier, but we're going to share with you the 2022 city approved projects. So this is just a breakdown of the various projects or groups that received funding, the trustee and the amounts. And some of this are supported by community building, others are supported by the safety network, others are supported by communications and EED. So the various working groups of the SDP support all these projects, which amount to a $500,000 investment that the city has approved. Some project funds that have been approved specifically this fall 2020 and for spring 2021 are access to recreation, and the contact is Ismail Afra, and the goal is to improve equitable access to city recreation programs, including reserved spots and program registration for residents of Regent Park. So if anyone has questions, Ishmael is part of our meeting and he can answer those questions. The second project name that's also funded through the SDP grant for the fall 2020 and spring 2021 year is Events Access to Spaces, and Ibrahim Afra is the events coordinator, as well as Leah Waldris, who's the Access to Space coordinator. And those are the folks that you can connect with, and their goal is to increase sense of ownership and belonging in the community, build a positive image for Regent Park, increase social cohesion between space owners and residents, including TCC market and condo residents, as well as between agencies, and increase access to spaces by community, remove barriers to access to space. Football for All is the third project, and it's $47,000. And Kevin Zavalos is here with Toronto Football Advancement Academy. He's the founder, and he can answer any questions regarding that project. And it's a set up a community-based Regent Park Soccer League for summer 2022. So those are the projects. The next thing is actions and next steps. So what to expect. If you want to be part of the community building working group, we need your contact information. So please share your email address if you're interested in attending our next meeting, which is the first Tuesday of every month. Please check your email for an invitation to our meetings. But most importantly, get involved. Get involved with one of our working groups or a project supported by community building or other working groups of the SDP. Your ideas matter. We want you to lead a project. We want you to get involved in supporting our collective goal of achieving social cohesion and inclusion. So now we're going to take questions, and we're hopefully going to answer those questions. But just before we get into questions and answers, please note that we created an email account, sdp.cbwg@gmail.com. There's regentparksocial.org. That is a great resource. You can also call me if you have any questions. I'm here to support you as well. And thank you so much for joining us. But let's go back to questions and answers. And I'm going to stop sharing so we can take questions from our amazing participants tonight. So it's 6:05. We've got some time for questions. Who would like to go first?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's very informative. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about how the money is, I guess, distributed. What the governance model is like among, like how to decide how much money each project gets. Is that like on the city side? Or is that more so because you have the $500,000, you guys kind of have the decision-making power over how much each project gets? And my second question might be better to answer first is the Regent Park Youth Grant, that's separate from the $500,000 because that's a private donation, right?
Joel, do you want to answer the second question, and then I can take the first one?
Yeah, it's separate. I mean, although it is sort of under that whole umbrella of this idea of the social development plan, so it's not disconnected, but it's separate.
Okay, thank you.
And to answer your question, my friend Andrea, you are right. These $500,000 has been allocated by the city, and it's meant to be decided through a community-led process. That's what we're referring to as the deep dive. And the goal through that process is actually to build consensus and buy-in for those projects. And what we hope happens is residents get involved through the working groups of the SDP to have a better sense of what those projects are, right? And also to think about new and innovative projects that could build on our collective goal of social cohesion and inclusion. So they could identify new project ideas, bring them to the working group, get the support of the working group, move it through the deep dive process. And what will eventually happen is we as a community will recommend those allocations to the city, which finally approves it. We don't approve it. It's not our money. It's a city. It's our money. The city is responsible for it. But at the end of the day, they get to cut the check. So they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that all the paperwork and everything, makes sense, that we're fiduciarily responsible in the use of those monies that are going to be invested in our community. So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. And I just have one quick follow-up question. So if, say, a small group or an individual comes to the working group and presents their idea for a project, is the next is one of the next natural steps to link that group with like an agency that might be able to support it? Okay.
Yes. So they can either be linked up with an agency. They don't have to work with an agency, but if they want to, there's various agencies that are part of the SDP Social Development Plan Stakeholder Stable that are invested in social cohesion and inclusion and want to support residents succeed through those resident-led projects. But there's also agencies that have hubs, trustee hubs, for example, that their service is to be a trustee, to support you. So no grassroots organization will be left behind if they want to participate in building, community building, through social cohesion and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Andrea. Who would like to go next?
I just got here.
Welcome, Wendy.
I was at a class, a textiles class before this, so
no problem.
I went to that one out there of the new revitalization of the brown buildings that aren't gone yet. I think phase 4 and 5. when I was outside there, and then there was one online. So I don't know if there's any changes. That there was a library thing they're talking about. I don't know if that means they're tearing down the old libraries at Parliament and Gerard and Broadview, if they're bringing that new one in. But that would be a lot closer to where I live than walking 15-20 minutes either way to go to a library. So I think that would be very handy, very, very, very handy. So I've been to 2 meetings already. So they were just talking about there could be choices of low, medium, and high buildings. That old smokehouse thing or whatever smokestack thing could stay there, which is fine because it looks really like a cool building. And there might be another one over there towards Parliament that might stay. And they're just having like 2 or 3 different options of what the bottom and the top end and all the way across what the stuff could look like, whether it's open space or whether it's business or whatever. So
Wendy,
I guess probably nothing has changed, right?
Yeah. Excellent point, Wendy. You're bringing up, you're talking about development, you're talking about changes in our neighborhood. And what we're doing right now is we're doing an orientation on community building. So that folks are aware.
I've been to those ones. I've been to those ones before too.
No worries.
Community wealth building.
Yes. So this is focused on making sure people are aware of the projects that are funded by the city, that are supported by community building, but also what is community building working group? How can people get involved? So we're trying to make it easier for folks to join our working group. We're trying to make sure that they understand the supports available if they want to run projects, get it funded to help us, build a community where we have social cohesion and inclusion, right? So that's the goal of our orientation. But I want to thank you so much for sharing that information. That was so helpful, Wendy.
Yeah, well, I thought it's great that they're talking about putting a new library in that brand new space, because then they probably won't need to have the other 2 there. They'll probably tear that down and make it or repurpose it into something else.
Yeah, that is
possibly.
True. So we have Diana. Diana has a hand up. Go ahead, Diana.
It's actually not a question, but something I just want to bring to the community building, and maybe we can discuss it further. So we do have 2 funds that came through. Last year, we got funding for what we call the, Dini, help me here, barrier reduction. What do we call it? Bridge builders, bridge builders. A project that we're working on. We didn't take it off because we had so many things going on last year. So there wasn't really, it's not that there wasn't any energy, but we just felt, we need to really rethink again. And then at the same time, so this is the 50K, money coming from the 50K funds, not the 500, but it's the 50K. And then the other money that came through is the one for the resident engagement that is also part of the 50K. And it's so what we are going to do is we have sent a letter to the city to say that we are extending the bridge builders project, but we want to link it with the resident engagement pieces that are together. So I was just I know one of those Lloyd is leading the one where you're looking at people with disabilities, how they can be engaged further. And then there are 2 of them. One is to focus on seniors, and the other one is to focus on, I forget the other piece of that. So just to say, maybe if that's something we can bring to the community building, and if they can also support in leading one of those. Because we're supposed to set up steering committees, and it takes a lot of time to set up a steering committee. It becomes more work and more meetings. So I'm just wondering if something we can piggyback with the community building and say, hey, here's a project. How do we work together? And we can discuss more about it further. But I just wanted to bring it out there.
Thank you, Diana. I never heard about this until today. So thank you so much for sharing that info. And I'm sure members of the community building working group would love to collaborate and work together on that, because it's similar to what we want to do, which is awesome.
So is that basically if you want to do a performance or something, or have a bunch of performers at some festival or something? Is that kind of thing, and bring the community to be involved? Is that kind of thing you're looking at, or?
It depends some of them are festivals. It depends with the discussion, how people want to engage in those resident engagement pieces. But there'll be a discussion as how best we can make it work. But they're already earmarked for some certain areas. One of them is specifically seniors, and the other one is already taking off. But I forget the other piece which it is. But definitely, it could be events. It could be something that people want to do. Yeah.
It's awesome. We've got that flexibility. Wendy, get involved. Get involved. Love
So
your
I guess
ideas.
I have to look at your webpage or your Facebook page or something to get more information.
Yeah, we got Regent Park Social. I'm going to post it up in the chat as well, so you see it. But that's a great website to get some information about community building. Okay, I'm going to share it in the chat, actually. Thank you for the reminder. Kevin, you are next, my friend. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, guys. I just wanted to clarify, is that the presentation that was provided by Lindsay, the orientation?
No.
We've used some of those slides. There was a lot more that we didn't use. We didn't want to take too much time for it, but it is, yeah. So some of those are, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I know there was going to be some updates on there, and I guess just to touch base on it, and what the city will agree with as well is that these grants the purpose of it is to support our most vulnerable sectors, right? Which is why this SDP was created as well, and in terms of the revitalization and TCH tenants that were here. And literally what our projects and what most of the SDP and all the working groups are trying to do is create that social cohesion between the communities, to create a cohesive environment between TCH tenants and market residents as well, and building a community that we are able to work together, right? Create employment for these vulnerable sectors, and also create accessibility to spaces, to what was the other one? Recreation, and to other employment opportunities. And I guess that's what most of these grants will be going towards, right? So yeah, I just wanted to touch base on that a bit, just because of the fact that I think that was something that was supposed to be included in there. And I think I had spoken to Lindsay as well, just because the SDP was created during the times of, when Regent Park was strictly TCH tenants. And I think that's a factor that we need to include in there as well.
Well said, my friend. Well said, Kevin, that Toronto Community Housing was the only landlord in Regent Park, right? It was 100% TCHC. And, we moved towards a private, public partnership, and you know how that works. But when it comes to the investment in the community, the SDP is one forum to ensure that folks are not displaced, and opportunities are created to build capacity for residents, especially the marginalized residents. So you put it right there, and I want to thank you and your amazing organization for the leadership you've taken to support some of our youth through recreational programming, through sports. That is such an important way to engage youth in the development and building relationships and trust that could open up doors for other opportunities in the community. So thank you so much, Kevin, and Football for All, for all that great work. Does anyone else have any questions with regards to our orientation? We still have time. So I have about 10 minutes for questions, and maybe what I can quickly do is I can quickly go through the projects funded by the SDP, so that you have a better sense of how to get involved. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to share the screen here.
Go ahead, Dani.
Yeah, I was wondering, on your monthly meetings, how many folks usually attend? Does it fluctuate? Is it fairly regular number of people?
I would say you could, like, it's 20 to 30, and 25 is kind of average-ish.
Yeah.
And I can't remember like we often want to track like how many residents are there, how many of them are TCH residents, how many of them are market, and how many are with agencies and organizations and so on, and how many are with grassroots groups. So I don't have those numbers super clear right now, but it's usually a majority of residents with a strong number of reps from organizations and so on. A lot of those residents are representing grassroots groups, not all of them. And probably about 60 to 40, I think. But that's just, it changes. And it's just like people come back pretty regularly. A lot of people are very much regular participants in it. And some people come and go. We want people to stay, and we want people that join our different projects or aspects of the work.
I'll just add that we've noticed an increasing trend of participation. So the reason why we're doing this orientation session is for new participants of the community building working group. We're recording it for that purpose, so that we could share it with folks, so that they're more familiar with regards to community building, our mandate, and also the projects that are funded by the city that are supported by a working group, amongst others. So maybe what we can do next, just maybe to get information out there, I'm going to quickly share the screen. I didn't put too much details in this slide, but I'll read it over so that folks have a better sense of these projects. So I'm just sharing a quick summary of the projects, the trustees, and the amounts, but I want to quickly tell you about the project. So give me 1 second. I don't know if I can do both here, but let me see if I can. So the first one, Building Leaders for Change. It's a project that will provide Regent Park youth with wraparound services and support such as skill building training and mentorship, with the goal of devising a meaningful action plan away from violence and towards a better future. The Healing Us One project, it will provide employment opportunities for youth through subsidized positions at local businesses and provide a safe space with activities for youth in Regent Park. The Regent Park TV project will engage, train, and support Regent Park residents and community members in the creation of video content for Regent Park TV, focus on communicating information pertinent to the SDP, redevelopment issues, and resident engagement. The SDP promotions project will make information about the SDP accessible to community members by creating promotional materials about the SDP and its various working groups and activities, and distributing them by reaching out to residents in Regent Park. The Women Health Social Circle and Engagement Network project will provide workshops, training, and other supports for women in Regent Park through a peer support and self-empowerment model. The Youth Empower Youth project will take youth-led research from phases 1 and work to implement the recommendations of the research into local agencies, including supports for youth and youth workers in Regent Park. The Youth Enrichment Academy program will cater to youth ages 11 to 14 in Regent Park, with the goal supporting vulnerable youth through teaching life skills and engaging them within their communities. So those are just some examples of the details related to the projects. I want to encourage folks to get involved with the projects, support the work of the working group, and I will stop sharing here and just to see if anyone has any questions.
I'll just add that there's representatives or leaders from most of these projects here tonight. And so if anybody has a question, like any of those projects caught your attention, or you have a question about it, you'd like to learn more about it, please take advantage of the time. Ismail.
Yeah, just wanted to comment on, is that a logo for community building? Because I like it, what do you call it? It says community building highlighted red, green, I think, and then SDP stakeholders table. I don't know if that's your logo, but in terms of the look, I love it. I just wanted to comment on that. That's something
We have Brother Waleed's creativity to thank for that. He concocted that for this evening. So thanks, Waleed.
Anyway, I'm used to the different work groups, but in terms of that overall framing, I love it. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Shmail, for your kind words, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our social media platforms. For more information, check out our website.